What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to your creative unconscious reading for June 25th. We are going to dive right in here. The themes that I was thinking about and that kept coming up, as I was thinking about birds and just even when I was kayaking this week, the way that the swans were just around the babies and the way that they were so protective, and just thinking about community more and how we're going to need each other. We already do, but I feel like, I saw this and I've noted this in other videos that we are, through COVID, there were care communities and care collectives that popped up and were taking care of people's needs that were neglected by institutions and organizations that were supposed to be, for the good, but then they really demonstrated a sort of futility in that and a lack of realizing their potential through the pandemic. So nonetheless, I feel like we're seeing it more and more. So as we usher in new ways of being and engaging with one another, what kept coming to mind was that was birds and flocks. And what came to mind really loud was this dialectic of light and the ways that we allow the light in, but how we do that through relationships and through our connections to others. So I'm gonna let's start here. I'm gonna dive in because I was thinking about it in terms too of the Rumi quote, where it's like it's not that we need to bring more love in, it's that we need to remove the blocks against love in. Some people have talked about it in a kind of like not quoting Rumi, but saying the same thing, that you need to take boulders out of the water or rocks out of the water, but it's really the same thing, right? It's a Rumi quote. So it's really about looking at, where it is that we're not allowing this in, where it is that we're not allowing connection and love to come in, or love to flow through other people to us, which is also an act of care, right? It's an act of care for self, and not to do that from a place of expecting that or entitlement or anything along those lines, but just when's the last time you let people love on you, right? When's the last time you allowed that for yourself? So we're going to dive in. So I'd like to invite the angels, my guardian angels, my spirit guides, protectors, teachers, and their healing energy to this space. And I ask that it is a safe and brave space that allows for the fullest expression of our light, humanity, ascension, and healing. All right, so let's dive in here and see where this takes us. Some messages for the collective, please, Spirit. What messages do you have for the collective for this creative unconscious reading for June? Oh, you want that one? Okay, for June 25th. So we have the Hierophant. I feel like this is where we're at now. Yeah, this is like the old institutions, the way that things have always been done, the way that, we've connected before. It's sort of like the old way, where it's like it's like this idea of like the one right way. And, per white supremacy culture that I've linked about and talked about here, there's another way of doing things that is not, it's not about order or hierarchy, but linear, and power across, power spread between. Certainly not in a position of dominance or anything along those lines. Power with, this feminist Audre Lorde and others have talked about this for decades. Power with as opposed to power over. So we have the Hierophant. What else do we have here, Spirit, for my creative collective, for their creative unconscious reading? We have the Eight of Pentacles. I'm almost seeing like this craftsmanship of unmaking and remaking yourself, because you see the snake here and how it's like snakes are creative, right? It's like old skin, but like new. So it's like it's almost like this sort of infinitude, this infinite possibility that's available to us right now. And that's what we're embracing, is all of the options of how to unmake and make ourselves again, right? I feel like that's Jack Halberstam is a queer theorist who's written about this as, queerness as this beautiful undoing and redoing ourselves, which is just phenomenal. I love queer theory. It's so good. So good. It's like reading poetry. So we have the Eight of Pentacles, the Hierophant, a lot of earth energy too. Cosmic Mirror. Ooh, that's a bonus one. This is the Tarot of Light and Shadow. It has a bonus card in it, and this is the Cosmic Mirror. So I feel a little bit like there's something that we're releasing illusions, we're releasing reflections that we, like when we see what we no longer want, are we owning the reflection as something that's permanent, or are we understanding that we can change the reflection by changing ourselves, right? How are we understanding that that reflection is itself a creative process? How are we understanding that that reflection is not necessarily what has to be? How are we understanding all of this? Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative collective, please? Whoa. 3 cards. So we have the Hermit, new wisdom. I feel like this is new wisdom coming in from within. Queen of Cups, and it's very heart-centered. It's connected to the heart space, and it's something that is in deep care and nourishment of our souls and spirits. Then we have the 10 of Wands, which is the release of the old. So it's almost like the new brings in, it's like the old can't stay. It can't sustain itself. And I think about this in terms of like all of the ways that we've, all of the different ways that we've made weapons really decorative, or we've weaponized distance, or weaponized togetherness in as distance, or something along those lines. Like it's like there's a way that it's showing up as an illusion, but I feel like the heart space here is this. It's where this deep wisdom is, and this is. I feel like this is a bit new for us. There's no newness here. I'll certainly clarify, but I feel like there's a bit of new here in the way that. It's all coming together here. Which one do you want, Spirit? Okay, I'm going to use the Pocket Wild Unknown to clarify here. Spirit, whoa. Can you clarify the Hierophant? We have the Knight of Swords. Yeah, this is like, it's almost like, again, the flock, right? Where it's like we're confusing, and this is also very biblical language too, right? Like the flock. Flock language is very much how very New Testament of you. But I feel like this is that flock mentality, but also it's like the truth of a new way of doing things. It's a deep wisdom. It's a deeply connected wisdom, but it kind of flies in the face of this tradition. So there's ways that we're breaking free from that. There's ways that we're breaking free from it as a collective. And I think we're moving into something much more sustaining, not just of community, but like of the earth. Like we're thinking like long-term investment in being here, right? Because a lot of I've experienced this in talking to not all, but many Christians, and this isn't to malign anybody, because it's really not what I'm doing here. This is just saying that a lot of biblical teaching and doctrine is based on the idea of not being here for a long time. So why bother? Because, God's going to take care of it. Someone else is going to take care of it. We're going to go to heaven. Screw the earth. Like, this is here for us to like take and take and take and take. So it's like this really disconnected relationship that we engage in with the planet, right? Because it's like we, especially with the way that we're always angling for, a heaven, a somewhere else heaven. And that's what a lot of people base their beliefs on. So they're never really present here and seeing the planet as worth saving where they are. So it's like that kind of, when I say sustainable, I'm also referring to something that is a long-term investment in us being here, right? We need to live like this is the only planet we have, not like we're getting ready to colonize another one, right? So, but this is like, I feel like there's a new way being made. There's a new way being made, and I think it's going to take a bit of big picture thinking. I think it's going to take some big picture thinking and perhaps some distance, new ideas for sure. New ideas. I feel like there's going to be research. Like I feel like everyone has, it's not just like everyone has a role to play. And it's not like this like new earth. It's not a new vision of something. It's where we are. It's like transforming where we are and what we're doing where we are. So we have the Page of Swords, the Ace of Wands. Yeah, these like fresh new ideas coming in. It feels like something brand new. Like this, I want to say dawn of the new. Like there's new here, and it's quite fiery. It's almost like it's replacing the light of the fire. And I think about this too in terms of community. Thank you so much, Spirit. That's a beautiful visual. When I was younger, my aunt had friends who were like, she had like, kind of chosen family that she would hang out with. and we would come to these like get-togethers and stuff, and they would be gathered around the fire playing guitar, and there would be 3 or 4 of them playing guitar, and they would all take a different part of the song, or they would layer the guitar over one another, and they would all sing like these older songs and things like that, like older to my ears when I was younger. But it was just, it's like gathering around the fire, that kind of idea, gathering around this idea, this way that there's a new path being forged. And I don't think it's like horrible. I don't think that anyone's going to really lose, but I feel like those clinging to the idea of this like traditional way, this old way, it's going to fall away. And I think that we're going to see that, because there's going to be, I keep hearing equalizer. There's like this equalizing force that's going to it's going to take away intermediaries who are not actually doing much. Like they're not actually connecting to spirit. They're not actually doing the work. They're just connecting and saying that. And then it's like they're acting as this intermediary and, obtaining all of these resources to do that, but they're not really connecting. They're giving, I don't know how to word it. It's like, it doesn't strike me as the most honest. So my cat is annoyed. Do you see that tail? That is an unhappy tail. Hey, what are you doing? Okay, so we also have the Ace of Pentacles. Yeah, lots of new. I think there's going to be new opportunities in this, and not ones to like jump on that opportunity and take advantage of it. I feel like there's going to be opportunities for us to sink into a deeper knowing of ourselves and what it is, not just that what we want and what we need and what we value. It's not the basics of that. It's a different kind of pentacle that I'm picking up on here. It's a different kind of view of oneself when with these changes taking place here. And I feel like it's the things that are, and people may be like, wait, you're describing a revolution. No, I think it's also a way of seeing ourselves in relation to one another. I'll move this down so that you can see this here. It's a way of relating to one another where perhaps we were focused on, like who, I don't know, I think about like, who's the most charismatic or charming leader? Who's the most this, that, or the other thing? And there's a way that it's being undone and then redone in this beautifully connected way. If this is more about relationships, I feel like this is more authentic relationships. It's like it can't really withstand the light of this fire or idea. So there's things that are shifting where it's like we can't withstand the idea. Like it's like inauthenticity just can't be sustained, right? Just can't be sustained. And this is an old tree. You can tell because there's sapwood and heartwood. I was looking at the heartwood in here. So the smaller the heartwood, there's a ratio of sapwood to heartwood. More sapwood indicates that it's a younger tree because that's where all the nutrients come up. But it's almost like this, it's like I'm seeing this sort of resonance in value. Where it's like the heartwood is still, it's like the heartbeat is still alive. It's not the way that heartwood works, but I'm seeing it here in a bit of a twist where it's like there's something to do with these are deeply connected, right? There's like this something is keeping this pentacle, and it's like they're intertwined. I'm seeing an infinity symbol. It's going to be, I think, it's like returning more towards a deeply connected way of relating to one another. And I feel like even if it doesn't hit mainstream organizations yet, it will. I don't think that it can help but do that. Like, I don't think that whatever these changes are, like, and I do think that there are changes coming. We know this, right? We know this. We know this. And I think that it is based upon the economy and things like that. Like there will be changes. Like we know it's not like, hunker down and like, this isn't like talking to you from prepper land. Like we're not doing that. It's just saying that there are changes coming and we know this. It's not something that's like a fool's errand to just consider for a moment. I think that, I read something about September 11th, and they, the article had said it's not about September 11th. It's who we decided we wanted to be on September 12th. That's the deeper thing. And I think this is like the question. It's not the change itself here, but it's who we would decide to be afterwards. Who we would decide to be, how we would decide to be afterwards. And it's like considering that now is almost an act of big picture thinking that is going to help to shift things so that when new things come, they're going to be based on connection. They're going to be based on like understanding that every person on this planet might just be a soulmate, right? What if we thought about it in those terms? That's not necessarily true, but what if we did? Because then it would lean more towards oneness and less, it would move away from this idea that only the ones that do something for your life matter. Only the ones that have an impact on your life are the ones to pay attention to. No, pay to everybody, because we all it's like there's a field that we're all connected through. So it's like realigning that perspective and priority. What that would look like in terms of policy, I have no idea. But Eight of Pentacles, we have the Page of Swords. I almost feel like this is like holding the light. Like this is a variation of holding the light. Like you're standing firm in this truth. And it's like, it's being unafraid of the process of putting in the work to make something new, to recreate, to see things be made again. The Ouroboros energy in here. Yeah, and just, it feels like maybe there's like an infinite possibility. There's an infinite number of possibilities here that you can tap into, that we can tap into. Three of Swords, yeah, not without a bit of heartbreak though, because I feel like it is going to involve leaving something behind. Like it's going to involve leaving, I don't want to say like an old life, but I feel like an old way of doing things. An old way of doing things is left behind. Because I'm getting the impression that like there's the swords aren't necessarily urgency, but the Knight of Swords is certainly fast-moving energy. Kind of as is the Page of Swords, right? It's stationary, but it's still of the same energetic potential, right? Owls, of the same energetic, of birds of a feather, right? So it's like there's an energetic potential here that is quite similar. So it could, in theory, act quite quickly to change things. And it's important to keep in mind that we don't need, Tower, Hermit, and Four of Pentacles. I was thinking here that there's a way that this reminds me of the Eight of Swords, but instead of being bound by thought patterns, this is your thought patterns being bound up by heartbreaks. Did heartbreaks is this like heartbreaks that are actual, or things that we keep allowing to break our own hearts because of the perspective that we hold about them, right? Not to, some things we do have to process, so don't push it away. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like, is there a way that we are breaking our own hearts with expectations that come from the beliefs that we hold about ourselves? Like, what do we expect of the world and other people? And then that came flying out. We have the Tower, which is unsurprising to me. It's like that something old is falling away here. Something old is falling away. And I also feel like there's a great deal of wisdom. So you may be compelled to go within and just to quiet yourself, to know what to let go of in this Four of Pentacles equation here, to know what to let go of, to know what is not worth keeping, but what's in your long-term Eight of Pentacles best interest. Because it's like, instead of just looking at the short term, I feel like there's a longer term game that we're starting to play collectively, and seeing that this short term way of doing things, it served so few people. Sure, it felt great, because like, who doesn't love the dopamine rush, right? Of like, I don't know what, I have ADHD, so my relationship to dopamine is interesting to begin with. But it's like, who doesn't love that idea? The dopamine hit of like purchasing crap, like you just buy stuff and it doesn't have any meaning, right? That it's like, all of those things serve the purpose of like individual. It's like maybe we're getting into a better relationship, like with biochemical stuff internally, like our internal processes. I'm not sure, but because I just thought about the ways that we just, I think about how many things are in landfills and all of that. And this is like, small picture compared to the bigger things we're gonna have to worry about. But if, ocean levels rise and things like that, which they are set to do, this is not like catastrophic thinking. This is like, they call them the doomsday glaciers, which is very ominous. But we do know that the planet is changing. So how are we making use of the space that we have with the land that we have now, in terms of landfills and waste and sustainable living? How is all of that coming together, right? This isn't, again, not catastrophic thinking. This is looking at the hard questions that we're going to have to face, and that I feel like in the next year or two, there will be things that we cannot unsee about the way that we live and how unsustainable it is, right? I think that we're going to need to be placing things upon drinking water, like naming it a human right, so that the cleanliness of the of water for people and others, like thinking about it in terms of Flint, Michigan, do they have clean water yet? Do they have clean water? Right? So it's like, if that isn't the case, then if water is declared a human right, that is the main priority, right? That is the main priority, as is the distribution of resources outside of capitalism, because it is the one thing that sustains life. It's why I'm so passionate about libraries, because the only place that you can go in the world, aside from the hospital, you can sit in the hospital and no one will ask you why you're there, because it's assumed that you are there for a purpose. But libraries are one of the only other places that you can go and you can just be yourself in community. You can be yourself and strike up a conversation with a stranger and see people transform from the inside out at no cost to them, where they just get to be regarded as humans first with something important to contribute, who have value fundamentally because they're here. So that kind of idea, that's why I am so passionate about them. But I think we're going to be seeing a turn more towards those types of spaces, those types of policies. Not because people are like, some politicians might say people are looking for handouts and whatnot, but it's not that at all. I think it's just a more human way. There's a book called Nurturance Culture, Turn the World Inside Out, I believe it is. And Nurturance Culture is, academically speaking, I mean, it's in activist communities for sure. And I think about it academically because of how much activism has found its way into academia, rightly so, because they used to be very at odds, I found. But nurturance culture is essentially the opposite of rape culture, where it's like non-consensual activities, extraction, a lot of harm done in this way. And if you think about it, we can look at these bigger systems that we're participating in economically, spiritually, in a lot of ways. They are extractive. They rely on hierarchical structures that reinforce the idea that it's okay to take without asking, the idea that it's okay to take without engaging. That sort of energy is very prominent. So I think we're going to see more of a shift towards places and spaces that do that. Yeah, the Fool. It's like we're going to see ourselves reflected here. We have to release the reflection that we don't like. And instead of running away, and we need to take a leap of faith on who we could be, this baby, right? We need to take a leap of faith on who we could be the day after something happens. But instead of waiting for the day after something happens, deciding in advance, right? Like making concerted efforts to do that before the shit hits the fan, so that we can decide what kind of humans we want to be collectively. We can decide what kind of people we want to be collectively. Absolutely. This is the Six of Swords. And we're moving away from what doesn't serve us. And this is the Morpho butterfly. Beautiful, beautiful butterfly. Look up the meaning of it, spiritually speaking. It's quite intriguing and apropos of this. But it's like, this is that transformative energy. It's that Pluto energy kind of sneaking in here and saying that the way that and it's also the butterfly effect too. Thank you so much, Spirit. It's also the butterfly effect too, where simple and small things will impact things in bigger ways. And we're going to be I feel like we're moving into a time where we're going to see things. It's going to be like, I don't want to say instant manifestation, but I am compelled to say that it's going to be very quick. It's going to be fast. It's going to be fast moving. It's going to be a very fast moving stream. And we can jump into it in a way that sort of, it looks at the fast moving stream as depletion, Five of Cups. We can look at it through disappointed eyes, because I think we're going to see how we've been doing. I think we're going to see how we've been doing in terms of, our systems in place that really do elevate and uplift us? Or is that just for the few? Is that a few that are able to say that? And we talk about personal manifesting, like manifesting our own experiences, but then how is it that the manifestation of good and awe and wonder in our lives moves outward from there and impacts others in a way that spreads the abundance around? Like, what does that look like for us? I'm not talking about like donating money necessarily. I'm talking about, when's the last time that you engaged with your neighbors in meaningful ways, even if they're jerks or whatever? I'm not talking about like putting yourself in harm's way. I'm saying though, like the neighbors beyond them. Like, when's the last community barbecue or event that you went to to just get to know people in your town, right? My hometown of Brampton, I miss it so much. I loved it living there because it was just so, I had done so much community work and activism when I lived there that, like knowing, just knowing if something needed to get done, who to call. It's almost like the Ghostbuster. Who are you gonna call? Like you would know this person could help with this specific thing because that was their skill set. So you could mobilize resources like this, like super quickly, because the activists there tended to be quite connected. We still kind of are, and just a lot of people who lived in Brampton are doing incredible things. Like I mentioned in another video, one of my friends, he's suing Canadian Blood Services to overturn the MSM blood ban. And he doesn't live in Brampton anymore, but I got to know him there, and we would hang out a lot and talked a lot about that case, and just before he decided to pursue it, because he wanted to change it at a legislative level. So it's like those types of connections where you could call someone up and be like, you know what, I know people who are so much smarter in this area than and I can call them up, and it's like making things happen, and having people that care deeply about community for the sake of community, not for the limelight or anything like that. It's caring for the people at the level of community, right? At the level of, if you can't make it out to an event, I will spend the hour in traffic coming to get you so you can come and be with people in queer community, in communion with your community, right? Like that kind of energy that would be put into things. So it's just, and there are so many people still doing that there that I adore them so much for what the impact that they're still having. But I feel like that kind of connectedness is what we are going to be seeing sort of expressed outwardly in so many different areas, not exclusive to my hometown where I grew up. I was born in Mississauga, but I feel like that's something that is it's something that we're going to see more and more. And this, I know it's a creative reading, but I think it's also the power of the flock. Like, it's the power of the flock, and just the ways, like that dialectic of the light. It's like talking through the light, not talking through as in like animating the light as a voice, but talking through it, just meaning like, speaking through what it means for everybody. And, like, you don't have to, when someone asks you how's it going? Most of the time they don't want the real answer, right? Most of the time they just want the appropriate answer. And as someone who's neurodivergent, I bumped into this before many times, where it's like they are, it's like they just want the answer that will provide a way for them to connect with people around them. And I feel like this is where I feel like neurodivergent folks are going to become that's going to be the norm. I feel like I don't think it's an evolutionary anomaly or a biological anomaly or whatever you want to call it. I feel like it's actually the norm. I feel like it's the norm. And, I think that there's so much that neurodivergent folks, not to say like I'm elevating myself, there are folks on the spectrum of that who are at different places of capacity, and it doesn't have anything to do with me being placed on it at all either. This is about the fact that spectrum, neurotypicality hasn't really served us, has it? Has it? Like, can we look at the way that society is and say that we're great, we're doing really well? Because I don't know that we can. And I think that in this sort of transformation, when we really face ourselves as a collective, I don't know it's not like there's no reckoning. Like, it's not something that's like biblical or anything like that. I feel like we're gonna see systems, Hierophant energy. We're gonna see systems shift and change, and we're really gonna be faced with questions about who we want to be in the face of those things. Who do we want to be in the face of those things, right? What stories do we want to believe about ourselves, right? Do we want to be in this place of sorrow? Do we want to be in this place of looking at the systems that have passed and, letting it sort of clip our wings, but also, the one thing about horses is horseshoes have to be maintained. They have to be cleaned. They have to be, they have to be mended in order for the horse to be able to run free. So freedom even has its own maintenance. And maybe that's a call here to remember that. But it's also the stories that we tell ourselves, the devil energy here. Could be something to do with the Capricorn full moon or Capricorn season. But I don't know why I just heard Saturn in Capricorn. I don't, anyways, okay. because I for some reason I thought of Saturn when I looked at this, and then I was like, a Saturn in Capricorn. Anyways, that I don't know if that's relevant for anybody, but I feel like this devil energy here is us asking what stories we want to tell about ourselves creatively, because this is a creative act. We forget that the act of moving away from something that no longer serves us is a deeply creative act, because we are in the process choosing something new. Two of Wands, like the whole spectrum of light gets in when we're in that place. Two of Wands, the whole spectrum of light. Oh, sorry, this was the Six of Wands. Six of Wands. I still think of it as transformative energy. It's more successful, but this is also an intuitive reading of the cards as well as their traditional meaning. So forgive me, but I feel like this is still, it's still a call we get to choose, right? The whole spectrum of light gets in now, and we have to decide what we do, what we want to get, what we want to let in. Oh, I didn't even notice, because I was talking about the hooves here of the horse and how they need maintenance, and then you see it's like that's where it's maybe it's like our groundedness. This is where I keep talking about this in terms of the root, sacral, and solar plexus of the collective are something that we're healing in a very profound way. I feel like there's going to be a split, though. There's going to be something that is like a rupture that we need to fix collectively and energetically, and I feel like that's where we're going to be giving back to that energy. But I think this is indicative not only of that root energy, that sacral and solar energy, but also a testament to the fact that, like, if you look at the issues, if people have issues with feet, in the book Heal Your Body by Louise Hay, she talks about how that represents forward motion and movement, momentum in life. And I think that that's something, like, we're deciding what steps we want to take, yes. But I think it's like now we have the opportunity to consider the full spectrum of light, not just in us, but in other people. And how do we want to realize that in our actions, in very grounded actions? And I feel like this is where we're sinking into that deep place of collective wisdom. And the Queen of Cups is also this collective heart space, this heart-centered, very sensitive, and with a depth of feeling. We are letting things that no longer serve us go. And this is almost like conflict. Like, I'm seeing this showing up as like laying down of your weapons, like laying down your weapons and people putting them down actively. This could be something to do with the NRA in the States too, like, because there's so much going. Like in Canada, we have different regulations and things like that. Like it astounds me how people cling to weapons the way that they do. I just don't understand it. But I feel like so this could be something along those lines where that's like a sign that there's like a huge change coming, where certain legislation gets passed or whatnot, or something happens with that. But I feel like it's like a laying down of weapons, right? It's a laying down of burdens, yes, and choosing something new. But I feel like there's the bigger story here is that there's a way that we have gone within, and maybe that's what the pandemic served as, this hermit purpose, where collectively we were in our own corners, really considering and thinking. Nature thrived. There were certain species of butterfly and birds that exploded in ways that they haven't seen before, which is really indicative of human impact, because both cars and planes were grounded, so they weren't in flight paths or things like that for birds or other insects and pollinators. So it was just such a great time to be nature. Even that was impacted differently. And I think we're considering how we're choosing to birth ourselves from this caring heart space, as opposed to from this place of a 10 of Wands where we were barely getting by, right? This survivor mode. Spirit, what message do you have for my creative collective, please? So it's like, who do you want to be? Like, don't focus on the things falling away, because if you do, it's almost like walking on hot coals, right? I've heard people talk about how it's not about like running across them. It's about understanding that you cannot stand still. Like, that's not the point. If you do stand still and you take in the fact that you're standing on hot coals and you're not in motion and making a decision about what you want that to do for you, and then moving forward from that, it's like that will hurt you, because you're not meant to stay in the heat. You're meant to understand that you can walk across it. But that there's a way that you are made for the walking through fire, yes, but you're not meant to stand in it, right? So it's like understanding that too. So we have the Hermit, Queen of Cups. No, that's so we have the Page of Wands. This is like, it's almost like the new, like we've created, this gives me hope because it's like the light gets in because there's new ideas coming to us collectively. There's new things arriving in our conscious awareness. This is creative instinct, but this is also gut instinct. And I think about this in terms of creative instinct, in terms of who do you want to be now? And you're answering the call individually. And then I feel like collectively, there's this coming together here. There's a coming together. Yeah. 10 of Swords. That's the releasing, right? There's the releasing. There's a lot of release here. So it's like we have the new idea, and then it's almost like we release the burdens and the frustration. And then what ends up happening is we get this new idea. Who do you want to be? We start to make decisions around that collectively. And then we realize that there's so many different thoughts about where we were, and patterns and constructs that start to fall away as well. So it's almost like I'm seeing like the side of a cliff falling into the water. Now this happens. Some of my family lives near this area in and around Lake Huron. The town of Goderich is close, but and on the cliff sides, my uncle would go boating, and he would show that there's ways that the cliffs would fall, and sometimes you'll see the one part fall, and then there's more that falls behind it. And I'm almost getting that visual on the 10 of Swords and the 10 of Wands, where one part falls apart and falls away, and then the rest of it falls away with it in turn. So we have the 10 of Swords, the Father of Pentacles. This almost reminds me, it's a little gay, but it does remind me of the buck moon in full moon in Capricorn on July 13th. So keep an eye out for that time. Not because, again, we're not doing this. I'm not picking up on a lot of fear here. This is just a depth of consideration of who do we want to be, and letting ourselves dream a little in that, expand into that. Considering that ahead of time, and not just relegating it to considering it ahead of time, so that when we make decisions, we can make decisions from an intentional place. We can make decisions from a place from the present moment, as opposed to making decisions from the past out of a place of fear and worry, right? It allows us to have said, yes, I've considered this. I've considered who I would be. I've considered the light in this scenario before it took place, before it went down. And this is what I decided. This is what I decided. And I feel like that's not only how peace arrives, that's like the wings of peace. But this is also, that could be something that happens from there too. But this is also, I don't know why I just heard armistice. I don't know. But I feel like there's peace that arrives from that. But again, there's stuff that will be cleared out. So it's like, it's understanding and balancing collective energy. I do these collective readings because I feel like this is the creative capacity that we're looking at, right? This is the creative capacity that we're operating from. So I feel as though there's more intentionality. I know that for spiritual folks, or folks who are on spiritual paths, there's likely been intentionality there for a while. But when it comes to asking hard questions of ourselves, like when it comes to, when I think about implementing things that might provide a path forward, I think about brilliant activists like Adrienne Marie Smith. I think it's Adrienne Marie Smith. And just the care collectives, mutual aid. Dean Spade is a trans theorist, professor actually, and brilliant one at that. Wrote the book Mutual Aid. Big deal. That's mutual aid is what a lot of these usually queer collectives that had care collectives for COVID, taking care of not just queer and trans people, but also cisgender and hetero people as well. So it's like no one was really left behind in that sense. But these are the principles that I feel are going to be brought into the next way of doing things. And it's not like commune living. This is really just care collectives. It is, there's a book called Beyond Survival. And there's another author, Adrienne Marie Smith. She wrote a book, brilliant book called Pleasure Activism. Highly recommend it. Let me grab this Nurturance Culture book. It's staring at me on my bookshelf. I'll show it to you so that you can see the cover. Yeah. Okay, so as I walked over to my wonderful bookshelf, there were a couple other titles. So I'm giving you these so that if you want to read them, these offer principles and ways forward that I was fortunate enough to be able to borrow them from a university library in grad school and read them, and I highly recommend them. There's an author called Sokopa Turner, and she wrote a book about healing justice and community justice. It's Tokopa Turner. Her book is brilliant. A repair, something along those lines. So this is the one, Turn This World Inside Out, The Emergence of Nurturance Culture. This book, I'll put all the links to them in the description below just to make it easier. But this one talks about the sort of the opposite of, violence is nurturance turned backwards. In its place, she proposes nurturance culture as the opposite of rape culture, suggesting that models of care and accountability different from call-outs rooted in the politics of guilt can move toward dismantling systems of dominance and oppression. When communities identify and interrupt systemic violence, prioritize the needs of those harmed, and hold a circle of belonging that humanizes everyone, they create a foundation that can begin to resist and repair the harms inflicted by patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism. So this is where it's like this way forward, right? Because people say like all the time, oh, this person was canceled, they were canceled, blah, 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 blah. Well, a lot of the time what they're talking about is call out culture that had served at one point, and like powerful men like Harvey Weinstein and that, but it doesn't serve at a smaller level, because if you're disempowering someone and you're canceling them and cutting them off from community, that flies in the face of a lot of even indigenous teachings in Canada that talk about the need and necessity of community, right? It's the concept is called restorative justice. And this is another one. This is another great book. I'll put it in the link, the link box below. We Will Not Cancel Us. Matt Kahn has a book that he just put out called Holding All the Love, and it's about holding space. But there's actually an activist called Heather Plett that released a book called Holding Space that was released, that has some things to do more so with the dynamics of it and how we can use holding space in a way in service to transformative justice as opposed to spiritual transformation. So both together matter. I just wanted to give both of them equal points. And so Adrienne Marie Brown is her name, sorry. So it's Emergent Strategy is another great book that I highly recommend of hers. In addition to that, this is Emergent Strategy, Facilitation, and Mediation. So again, a lot of restorative justice concepts that come from movements that prioritize prison abolition and getting rid of these systems that would keep people in chains in a way that doesn't allow them to really ever make amends for or come back from things that they do, that why do we live in a world that thrives on that violence? Because we can't on the one hand say I want a better world, engage in those kinds of behaviors, and then say that we're absolutely in integrity with justice, because we're not. We've actually twisted the concept of it. And this is also, so this is Beyond Survival. I love this book so much. It's strategies and stories from the transformative justice movement. So this transformative justice is really about repair, right? This is about not running from or feeling like you have to be banished from community when things happen. And again, Dean Spade is another author who actually has a quote on the back suggesting this book. But these are activists that have given us gifts. And because we at one point maligned 5D or maligned 3D as being so disconnected and it's only spiritual stuff that matters, well, I can tell you that having done community work and worked in activism, that shit is where people live. And you can't just abandon one in favor of the other, because then that polarizes and throws the energy completely off base. These provide a way forward to facilitate transformation, and it's called restorative and transformative justice because it doesn't misapply justice in the name of replicating some kind of violent system, right? We want to move towards the light. So how are we invoking it in the way that we engage with everyone and also turning an eye towards ourselves? Activists are some of the most caring individuals that I've ever met and hold so much space, not just for others, but for their own activist friends who it's something truly to behold. So I recommend reading those books in the context of this reading in particular, because I feel like we are being given an opportunity right now, and I feel like economically speaking we will be given more so. That's even more so the case, right? And not from a place of fear. These books really helped to provide me with a way to anchor in a what's next. And it's probably the fact that I'm so community oriented, North Node and Mars in the 11th house, all of this stuff, so much Aquarian energy in my chart. like 2 stelliums ish. Like it's just, I feel like there's so much here that we have to offer one another. And when it's buried under who we've always been, and systems that do not serve us anymore, systems that don't serve us anymore, that don't allow the light to really shine out from under all of these cultural accoutrements that are really harmful, we can't move forward. We can't move forward because we stay in this very stuck place. I feel like we're letting go and we're seeing that, but what we have to do is understand that there's something about one another, you know, there's something about one another, and to be found in that, and to be found in that where you are. It's not just about, I'm going to find people who exist only in my silo. It's about people who exist outside of it. And yes, find your people who get you at a very fundamental level. There's also going to be, I think, a need to connect with people and the things that make us similar. So my own, people say, don't talk politics on tarot. It's fine. Because I can make space for all of the complexity, and I encourage people to do that here too. But I was talking to someone who is on the totally opposite end of the political spectrum to me, and I was speaking from mine, which is more, I want to say, like left-leaning, which is probably obvious as a trans person. Why would I vote against myself? But the person I was talking to was further to the right, still treated me fine, didn't misgender me or mispronoun me, use my name. And it was a stranger, and we were talking about how, we see how both sides are in the coming year to 5 years. We will not be able to be so polarized, because something will come to matter more than where you are on political spectrums, than where you are on spectrums like that, on ideological spectrums that are, thought exercises that when it comes down to it, nobody's going to question whether someone needs food. So we will go to community centers. This is where people donate clothes, regardless of asking who the recipients of them will be in the light of tragedies like fires or tornadoes or hurricanes or things like that. We don't ask those questions. So I think it's like implementing those things ahead of time, not because these horrible events are going to come. It's not about doing it from a fear-based place. It's about doing it from an intentional magician place that is grounded in this King of Pentacles stability, because we're making active choices about what matters now. We're not doing that or waiting to be thrown about by waves. We are making these intentional, very intentional decisions to communicate what is important to us, to communicate transformative capacity, because I feel like that is where peace is going to come from, not just grounded in the present moment, but also because of the actions that we take in the present moment that free us, that allow us to see beyond something that can keep us so bound together. And I'm thinking about the Glennon Doyle quote where she's like, you're a goddamn cheetah, right? Like, free yourself. This is about freeing ourselves. Holy, that was a lot of channeling. So I'm going to pull from the chakra deck here. I'm just curious about a couple cards, Spirit, for the collective chakras that we can send energy to, that we can take action in service of, and that we can look to heal within ourselves, that might then move outwards towards others in a healing capacity just by virtue of us shining a light and being ourselves. Thank you. Space. I have all the space that I need to flourish, grow, and express myself. I take up my space in all areas of my life. The space around me is clear, and I continue to cleanse and make sacred my space. I'm going to pull one more here. So a lot of throat chakra here, very interesting. And something that Sonia Choquette said once is that the throat chakra is like the chimney stack for the heart. So what is it that's operating in the heart, that's burning out of the heart? And what are we speaking of that from? What is it? What is the sacred smoke that we are allowing to move through the chimney stack up into the chimney stack of the energy center of the heart into the throat? How is that moving? So truth, right? Truth is here. It is safe for me to align with and express my higher truth, wisdom, and knowing. I allow others to hold a different perspective to me, and I know that there is enough space in this universe for all of our truths, including my own. I am honest with myself and hear the resonance of truth in my words. I express my truth. Yeah. 150%. I feel like that's something like it's what is the truth? This isn't just about speaking the truth, but these are about being able to see it and hold hold the truths, hold complex truths, hold the nuances of truths, so that we're not in these binarized ways of thinking of and conceiving of the world around us. We are able to contain the infinite light of the universe in the way that we look at the path forward. We can see this spectrum of light, and we understand that there's light we can't even see, but that's not stopping us from envisioning what that might be and feel like. And we're not asking whether people deserve based on specifics, right? We're not asking those questions. And I feel like that's where this path forward is coming from. So it's saying, who do you want to be? Who do we want to be? Spirit, what message do you have for my creative collective for this creative unconscious reading on June 25th, please and thank you. Love is never in vain, right? And honestly, this is so, again, the truth, right? The truth. It's like we are ceasing to classify whether people are deserving of things. It's at the heart of the prison abolition movement. I was in a class in grad school, and I was taught by brilliant scholars, and one of the things that they talked, we learned about prison abolition, and honestly, like we a lot of us were before, but there was understanding the mechanics of it and dynamics of it. Can you say that you believe in human containment and confinement in the absence of restorative justice that might restore other people's humanity? Because it's not just looking at the context of that in prison abolition, it's also looking at it in the context of policies that support the casting away of some as totally unworthy. I think about in Canada when cannabis was legalized, right? So this is Ontario specific as well, but Canada too. So it's like when cannabis was legalized, the next step was not to remove people who were charged with possession of it, because now it's no longer a crime. Those things were still upheld, and those lives were still limited and diminished, even though the things that they were penalized for, historically speaking, and overwhelmingly communities of color, right? Those things were still held against them. So it's like looking at the things that the ways that we value people through policy, the ways that we value people through systems that we uphold. I highly recommend looking at prison abolition movements. If you haven't already, or if you're unfamiliar with it, I feel like we're moving beyond the idea of confinement, beyond the idea of prioritizing specific bodies over others, because we know, based on statistics, Robin Maynard has a brilliant book called Policing Black Lives, and it is a book that brings every statistic that you could ever imagine not knowing to the fore in terms of this need to move past systems that confine specific people, and it's like, it's to me, it characterizes the importance of transmuting and translating energy from who do we want to be into who am I deciding to, what am I deciding to stand up for? What am I deciding to lend to the collective? What am I deciding? How am I deciding to stand in this collective where I am, in this present moment where I am, and agree with, or stay silent about, or do nothing about? And I'm not saying to go out and change everything, because we can't. There's a lot that we just can't change, but we can decide what kind of people we're going to be. We can decide what kind of energy we're going to embody. We can decide what kind of fear we're going to operate from. We can decide what kind of things we are going to do going forward, right? We always have that opportunity. You're being watched by loving eyes. Yeah. So this is also love is never in vain, right? This is the other aspect of caring in this deep way for community, is that you can sometimes feel like it doesn't have any purpose, like it does nothing. But again, I bring back this butterfly effect here. It absolutely does. Every flap, proverbially, every beat of a wingspan, every beat of a wing does something. Every time you may think that you can't do anything. Trust me, I look out at the world often, and there are times where you can only let so much in, because it can be overwhelming. It is never in vain to prioritize love and to prioritize living from a place that really takes a look at things like white supremacy culture and dismantles it from the inside out. Because what you're doing is also dismantling the places that it lives in you. And many people think that it's just, doing that work and going to those places is so charged, and it's just for It's because it only impacts people of color. No, it impacts everybody. It also, Sonia Renee Taylor, her book, oh my gosh, the cover, I'm so bad with this. I can picture the cover. The Body is Not an Apology. The workbook in particular, there's a specific chapter where she talks about how, these systems also harm everybody. They don't just harm people who belong to specific races. It harms everybody. But we have to find the places that these systems live within us, and that's this dismantling work. Is it hard? Yes. Will it cause anxiety? Probably. Will it feel amazing all the time? No. But the thing is that it's like a purging. This is like that releasing of this collective energy, where we are releasing the things that had gotten the blockages in the collective root, sacral, and solar plexus energies. And we are releasing that energy because we are deciding what it is that we want to burn out of the heart chakra, and that smoke moving into the throat chakra. My cat's like, I'm out. But what is it that's moving into the throat chakra, right? What truths do we want to embody? Most people want freedom. They want those freedoms. And I think it's important at this point to understand that we do have choices, and it's just being intentional. It sounds so much harder or more complicated than it actually is. It sounds so much more difficult. It sounds so much more profound and harmful and all of these things. But some people avoid politics, but I would invite you to consider that as a trans person, I do not get the benefit of turning an eye away from politics. I don't get that benefit, because if I did, it might mean that I, have my access to testosterone taken away if I'm not at that forefront as well. These are decisions that are still impacting me, based on where I can even travel, because my existence is illegal in specific places, 5555 on the time. I do think that's changing. That is very fortuitous. But, spirituality cannot avoid its intersections or interstices with politics and spirituality. They are quite together, because we need to keep in mind that how we vote is the truth that we are looking to bring into the world. And that's not to say like we all have to have the same thoughts or anything like that, but I feel like this shift is taking place collectively. And I've been picking up on this for a while, but I feel like this shift has taken place as well with the pandemic, where we had more quiet to be in this hermit energy and to ask big questions, and even to ask big questions of systems that we may not have ever asked before in that time. And so I think that this is not so much, again, not a fear-based place that we're operating from. This is the furthest thing from it. This is the integration and transmutation of energy that no longer serves us, and moving into something that's more healthy and whole, that upholds and supports everyone, like that has that capacity. Can you imagine? Can you imagine, right? Spirit, what message do you have for my creative collective to close out this reading, please? Everything is working out for my highest good. Yes, and it's believing that it's possible and envisioning how that might be possible, through community, through connections, through relationships, right? Everything is working out for my highest good. Trust that even in challenging times, the universe only wants what's best for you. And I think that we may be called to really consider how that's true for us, to consider how that's true. My cat's coming back. She's going to go for it. You go, baby girl. Oh, okay. Thank you. It's really, you do have ginger fur. She just wanted everyone to know that she's here and that she loves y'all. I'm willing to let love in. Yes. Oh my gosh. And that's the thing. We have to be willing to let it in. We have to be willing to let it in to work through us and other people as well. Open your arms wide and say, I am willing to let love in. It is safe to let love in. Repeat 3 times. So, my darling creative collective, that is your reading. I hope this provided some guidance for you. If it resonated, please like and subscribe. Even if if there were even resources in here that resonated or that piqued your curiosity, feel free to like and subscribe as well. I tend to throw in a ton of resources and things that I've learned and picked up along the way. So there is that. There are other ways to connect with me on the channel, but if this is where we part, my creative unconscious, my creative collective, my wonderful darlings, I hope that wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, it finds you very, very well. Take care and have a wonderful rest of weekend.